I can tell you that the case is more than that. I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now. Senator Adam Schiff said those words on national television in March of 2017. He repeated them over 100 times across 3 years. He told America he'd seen proof that President Trump colluded with Russia. The Mueller report found no collusion. December 23, 2025. Senate Intelligence Committee hearing room. Mahogany panels absorbed the winter light filtering through tall windows. American flags stood sentinel in the corners. The room smelled of old wood power and lies that had aged too long. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino sat at the witness table. A thick manila folder rested in front of him. This was his last briefing before he walked away from Washington for good. 8 months in the belly of the beast. Long enough to see the corruption. Long enough to document it. Long enough to get the receipts. Across from him, Senator Adam Schiff adjusted his glasses. Still smug, still polished, still convinced that President Biden's preemptive pardon made him untouchable. The pardon had come through just 11 months ago in Biden's final hours in office. Schiff wore it like armor. Bongino opened the folder. FBI documents. Declassified 72 hours ago by Director Kash Patel. 302 forms, interview summaries, whistleblower testimony that had been buried for 8 years. He looked up at Schiff. Dead calm. A street cop staring down a criminal who thought he'd beaten the system. Senator, you said you saw the evidence. I've spent 8 months at the FBI looking for it. Pause. Let it land. Every person in the room leaned forward. Where was it? Schiff's face went pale. His hand moved toward his water glass, then stopped. He knew. This wasn't a briefing. This was a reckoning. Bongino didn't waste time with formalities. No opening pleasantries about the weather or thanking the committee for their time. The Washington playbook could burn. Senators, this briefing is about FBI accountability. His voice carried the flat authority of 20 years in law enforcement. NYPD, Secret Service, Presidential Protection Division. Specifically, accountability for those who weaponized the FBI against political opponents. He slid a document across the polished table. It landed in front of Committee Chairman Mark Warner with a soft sound that somehow echoed in the silent room. FBI Form 302. Interview Summary. December of 2017. Bongino read aloud slowly, letting each word sink in like a blade. House Intelligence Committee staffer reports Ranking Member Schiff ordered classified leaks to damage President Trump. The room froze. Even the stenographer's fingers paused over her keyboard. Senator Schiff shifted in his chair. Point of order. This is a transparent political attack designed to... Chairman Warner raised his hand. Senator Schiff, the witness, has the floor. Warner's face was stone. He might be a Democrat, but even he understood what was happening here. Some lines couldn't be uncrossed. Bongino continued as if Schiff hadn't spoken. He pulled another document from the folder. September 2017 interview. Same whistleblower. Quote, Ranking Member Schiff was particularly upset as he believed he would have been appointed as director of CIA had candidate Hillary Clinton won the election. A Republican Senator Rubio maybe leaned back in his chair, whistled low under his breath. Schiff tried again, voice rising. Mr. Chairman, these are discredited allegations from a disgruntled former employee who was fired for cause. This entire... Senator! Bongino's voice cut through Schiff's protest like a knife through silk. The whistleblower was your appointee, a Democrat. Career intelligence officer. Worked for Democrats on the Intel Committee for 12 years before you drove him out. He slid another document forward. This one he held up so the entire committee could see the FBI seal at the top. June 2023 interview. Most recent testimony. Let me read this slowly so everyone understands. The room held its breath. Schiff stated the group would leak classified information which was derogatory to President Donald J. Trump. Pause. Let them absorb it. Schiff stated the information would be used to indict President Trump. Republican senators leaned forward now. Democrats looked at their notes, their water glasses, anywhere but at Schiff. The senator from California sat rigid, jaw-clenched, knuckles white, on the armrest of his chair. Senator Cotton spoke up, voice hard. Deputy Director, are you saying that the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee orchestrated leaks of classified information for the purpose of manufacturing an indictment against a sitting president? I'm not saying it, Senator. Bongino tapped the FBI document. The FBI's own interview records are saying it. A Democratic whistleblower under oath told federal agents that Adam Schiff ordered the systematic leaking of classified information, not to inform the public, not for legitimate oversight, to indict a president. Schiff found his voice again, but it had lost its smooth confidence. These baseless allegations were investigated and found to be without what Senator Bongino leaned forward. Without merit or without consequences, because the Justice Department ran out the clock on the statute of limitations. The silence that followed was profound. Senator Schiff, you've been on television every week for the last 8 years talking about FBI accountability, transparency, fighting corruption. Bongino's words came out measured, almost gentle. The tone made them more dangerous. You've written op-eds, given speeches, built your entire Senate campaign on being the guy who stands up to abuse of power. He opened the folder wider. More documents visible now. So many more. Let's talk about your accountability. Let's talk about your corruption. Because for 3 years you told America you'd seen evidence that didn't exist. And when Americans called you a liar, you hid behind the very classified information you'd leaked to protect yourself. Schiff tried to grandstand. Old habits from his House days. Deputy Director, this hearing was supposed to be about FBI reforms under the Trump administration. Instead, you're engaging in a partisan, "Oh, we'll get to reforms, Senator." Bongino's smile didn't reach his eyes. But first I want to understand something. March 22, 2017. You went on Meet the Press. Chuck Todd asked if you only had circumstantial evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. He pulled out a printed transcript, held it up. You said, and I quote, "Actually, no, Chuck. I can tell you that the case is more than that. I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now." Bongino set the transcript down, looked directly at Schiff. "Senator, you said you saw the evidence. Where was it?" Schiff opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "The investigation was ongoing at the time, and I couldn't discuss—" "That's interesting, Senator, because you discussed it over 100 times on national television." Bongino pulled out another document. CNN, April 2017. MSNBC, September 2017. ABC, December 2017. Every time, the same story. "I've seen evidence, more than circumstantial. Can't go into particulars." He looked up from the papers. "Can't go into the particulars, or couldn't show the particulars because they didn't exist." Schiff's face had gone from pale to flushed. The Mueller investigation ultimately, the Mueller investigation found no collusion. Bongino's voice rose for the first time, not shouting, but power behind it. The voice of a cop who'd seen every con game, every lie, every desperate criminal trying to squirm free. Zero. Robert Mueller himself said so. Attorney General Bill Barr said so. Even your own Intelligence Committee investigation found no evidence of coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. He leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Senator, you told America their president was a Russian agent. You said you'd seen the proof. Where was it? Show me. Right now. Show me one piece of evidence that Mueller missed. One document that proved collusion. Where is it? The room waited. Schiff said nothing. No answer. Bongino nodded slowly. That's okay, Senator, because I've got the receipts. Every lie, every leak. Every time you went on television and told America you'd seen evidence that never existed. He opened the folder all the way. Papers spilled across the table. FBI 302s, news transcripts, congressional testimony, declassified memos. And we're going through all of them, right now. Bongino stood. He wasn't asking permission. This was his briefing, and he'd run it his way. He picked up a stack of documents organized with tabs, color-coded, a prosecutor's case file. Let's start with what the American people were told versus what you actually knew, Senator. He held up the first document. March 22, 2017. Your first public claim of having seen more than circumstantial evidence. Let's look at what the FBI actually had at that point. Bongino flipped through pages. The Crossfire Hurricane investigation had been running since July 2016. 9 months. You know what they'd found. He looked up at Schiff. Nothing. Zero evidence of coordination. The FBI's own internal documents, now declassified, show agents questioning whether there was any there. Peter Strzok, the lead agent, texted about the lack of evidence. The CIA told the FBI they had nothing showing collusion. That's a gross oversimplification, Schiff started. Is it? Bongino cut him off. Senator, I've read every document from Crossfire Hurricane, every FISA application, every agent report, every witness interview. You want to know what Mueller found after 2 years and $40 million. He pulled out the Mueller report, held it up. 448 pages. Quote, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Unquote. Bongino set it down with a thud. No conspiracy, no coordination, no collusion. But you told America for 3 years that you'd seen evidence of exactly that. More than circumstantial, Senator. Schiff's face had lost its color again. He tried a different approach. The investigation revealed significant contacts between contacts aren't crimes, Senator. My job at Secret Service, I had contact with foreign nationals every day. Doesn't make me a spy. Bongino's Brooklyn accent came through stronger now. The street cop, not the federal official. You said collusion. You said conspiracy. You said you'd seen evidence that would indict a sitting president for treason. He leaned on the table with both hands. Where was it? The Republican senators were nodding now, taking notes. Senator Kennedy from Louisiana had a slight smile. He'd been waiting years for this moment. Bongino wasn't done. He pulled out another document. Let's talk about your appearances on television, because you didn't just make these claims once or twice. You made a career out of it. He read from a compiled list. March 22, 2017, more than circumstantial evidence. March 23, direct evidence of deception. April 2nd, evidence a grand jury would want to see. April 23rd, I can't go into specifics, but there is evidence. He flipped pages. July 23, 2017, credible evidence of collusion. September 17, damning evidence. December 10. I've seen ample evidence. The list went on and on. Bongino read dates and quotes for nearly 2 minutes straight. The cumulative effect was devastating. It wasn't one mistake, one overreach. It was systematic, calculated. 3 years of lies. Senator, that's just year one. Should I continue through 2018, 2019, because you didn't stop until the Mueller report came out and made you look like the liar you are? Schiff's hands trembled slightly. He clasped them together. The evidence of improper contacts was substantial. Improper contacts. Bongino's voice rose. You said collusion. You said conspiracy. You said treason. Don't try to move the goalposts now, Senator. We've all seen the footage. It's on YouTube. Your own words. Over 100 television appearances where you claim to have seen evidence of criminal collusion. He pulled out his phone, held it up. Want me to play the clips? I've got them queued up. Every single lie. Should we watch them together? Schiff looked away. That's what I thought. Bongino set the phone down. Senator, do you understand what you did to this country? How many Americans believed their president was a Russian agent because you told them you'd seen the proof? The room was silent. Democrats shifted uncomfortably. Republicans watched like hawks. Families stopped talking. Friends became enemies. The country tore itself apart. My own family. I've got cousins who won't speak to me because of what you said, because they believed you. They believed the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee wouldn't lie about something that serious. Bongino's voice dropped. Quieter now. More dangerous. But you did lie, didn't you, Senator? You lied to the American people for 3 years. You went on television over 100 times and told them you'd seen evidence that didn't exist. Why? Schiff tried to respond. The role of congressional oversight requires, don't give me the civics lesson, Senator. I want to know why. Why did you lie? Bongino picked up the September 2017 FBI 302 again. Let me read something else from this whistleblower interview. Ranking member Schiff was particularly upset as he believed he would have been appointed as director of CIA had candidate Hillary Clinton won the election. He looked up at Schiff. That's it, isn't it? You thought you'd be running the CIA. Instead, you were ranking member on an intelligence committee with a Republican chairman. You were supposed to be in the power seat, and instead you were watching Donald Trump sit in the Oval Office. That's absurd, Schiff started. Is it? The whistleblower says that after Trump's election, quote, Schiff believed Russia hijacked the election and the United States was in the middle of a constitutional crisis. Bongino set the paper down. You didn't just believe Russia interfered. You believed they hijacked the election. You believed we were in a constitutional crisis. And you believed the only way to fix it was to take down Trump by any means necessary. He pulled out another FBI document. The whistleblower continues, classified information began leaking to the media. The Democratic minority leadership was aware of the leaks, but was under the impression that leaking the information was one way to topple the administration and fix the constitutional crisis. The room erupted, Republican senators talking over each other, Democrats shouting for order. Chairman Warner banged his gavel. "Order! We will have order!" But Bongino just stood there calm, letting the chaos wash over him. He'd spent 8 months at the FBI. He'd seen the documents. He knew what was coming. This was just the opening act. When the room finally quieted, he spoke again. "Senator Schiff, you didn't conduct oversight. You conducted a coup attempt. You used your position as ranking member, then chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, to systematically leak classified information to the media with one goal: remove a sitting president." Schiff stood up. "I will not sit here and be accused of—" "Sit down." Bongino's voice cracked like a whip. Pure command presence. 20 years of facing down criminals, terrorists, and threats to presidents. "You wanted this hearing, Senator. You've been calling for FBI accountability for years. Well, you're about to get some, so sit down and take it." Schiff slowly sank back into his chair. He looked smaller somehow. The smug confidence was gone. In its place, fear. Because Adam Schiff knew what was in those files. He'd known for 8 years. And now, everyone else was about to know too. Bongino smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Now, let's talk about how you leaked, Senator, and who helped you do it." Bongino walked around the witness table, not pacing, prowling. A predator circling wounded prey. April 2017. A particularly sensitive document was provided to the House Intelligence Committee by the intelligence community, highly classified, eyes only for committee members and a small number of cleared staff. He stopped, looked at Schiff. "You know which document I'm talking about, don't you, Senator?" Schiff said nothing. His jaw clenched. "Within 24 hours of that document arriving at your committee, its contents appeared in the Washington Post. Almost verbatim." Bongino let that sit. "The intelligence community officials descended on your committee offices. They were furious, threatened to stop providing intelligence to Congress, because someone on the House Intelligence Committee was leaking like a sieve." He pulled out another FBI 302. The whistleblower describes what happened next. Quote, "A particularly sensitive document made available was viewed by a small contingent of staff, as well as Schiff and Representative Eric Swalwell. Within 24 hours, the information appeared in the news almost verbatim." Senator Cotton leaned forward. "Deputy Director is the whistleblower saying that only Senator Schiff, Representative Swalwell, and a handful of staff saw this document." "That's exactly what he's saying, Senator." "And within a day, it was in the Washington Post." "Correct." Cotton looked at Schiff. "That's a pretty small pool of suspects, wouldn't you say?" Schiff tried to deflect. "I have no knowledge of any unauthorized disclosures." "You have no knowledge." Bongino's laugh was harsh. "Senator, let me read you something else. This is from Mike Pompeo, when he was CIA director. He went on Fox News and said, quote, "Adam Schiff lied to the American people, and during my time as CIA director and Secretary of State, I know that he leaked classified information that had been provided to him." He set down the transcript of Pompeo's interview. Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, said you leaked classified information. He said, quote, "When we provided information to him and to his staff, it ended up in places it shouldn't have been with alarming regularity." Bongino's voice rose. "The CIA director said you leaked so much that he had to withhold intelligence from the House Intelligence Committee chairman because you couldn't be trusted. Think about that. The CIA couldn't trust the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Schiff's face was red now. That's a politically motivated? Politically motivated? Bongino cut him off. Senator, why did you need a pardon? President Biden gave you a preemptive pardon on January 20th, 2025. His last day in office. Why, what were you afraid of? The room went dead silent. If you didn't leak classified information, why did you need a pardon? If you didn't do anything wrong, why did Biden have to protect you from prosecution? Schiff's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Let me tell you what I think happened, Senator. Bongino walked back to the witness table, picked up more documents. I think you knew from day one there was no real evidence of collusion. I think you knew the Steele dossier was garbage. I think you knew the FBI's investigation was falling apart. He held up document after document. But you also knew that if you said there was no evidence, your political career was over. You'd built everything on being the guy who was going to take down Trump. If it turned out there was nothing there, you're just another failed politician. Bongino's voice dropped to almost a whisper. The whole room leaned in to hear. So you lied. You went on TV and said you'd seen more than circumstantial evidence, and when people asked for specifics, you hid behind classification. Can't go into the particulars. How many times did you say that Senator 50, 100, the investigation was classified at the time? Schiff tried. But you were leaking that classified information to the press. Bongino's voice exploded. You can't claim you needed to protect classified information while you were actively giving it to reporters. He pulled out his phone again, pulled up an image, held it up so the committee could see. This is a text message from your former staff director to a Washington Post reporter, April 17th, 2017. 3 days after that sensitive document arrived. Want to know what it says? He read aloud, "Call me on my wife's phone, 9 p.m. Bongino set the phone down. Your staff was using their spouses' phones to communicate with reporters, to hide the calls from congressional phone logs. That's not a mistake, Senator. That's consciousness of guilt. That's someone who knows what they're doing is wrong and is trying to cover their tracks." Senator Rubio spoke up. Deputy Director, how did you obtain that text message? FBI investigation. Senator, the Bureau was investigating the leaks in 2017. They subpoenaed phone records, found patterns, found that House Intel Committee staffers were using family members' phones to contact reporters. The investigation died because he looked at Schiff. Someone at Justice ran out the clock on the statute of limitations. Bongino picked up another document. His hands were steady. His voice was calm again. The rage was controlled, channeled. Let me read from the June 2023 whistleblower interview, the most recent one. The one where the whistleblower finally said everything because he realized no one was going to hold you accountable. He read slowly, emphasizing each word. When working in this capacity, I was called to an all-staff meeting by Schiff. In this meeting, Schiff stated the group would leak classified information which was derogatory to President of the United States Donald J. Trump. Schiff stated the information would be used to indict President Trump. He looked up. An all-staff meeting, Senator. You didn't even try to hide it. You told your entire staff, we're going to leak classified information to take down the president. And when one brave staffer objected and said it was illegal, you know what happened. Pause. The whistleblower says, quote, unnamed members of the meeting reassured that they would not be caught leaking classified information. Bongino leaned forward. Not that it was legal, not that it was proper oversight. They reassured him they wouldn't get caught. And you know what, Senator? They were almost right. Because the Justice Department sat on these FBI reports for 8 years, let the statute of limitations expire. Protected you. He pulled out one more document. Until Biden gave you that pardon. And that's when I knew. The moment I heard about that pardon, I knew everything the whistleblower said was true. Because innocent men don't need pardons. People who did nothing wrong don't need preemptive protection from prosecution. Bongino walked around the table again, stood directly across from Schiff, 3 feet away. So let me ask you again, Senator, and I want you to look me in the eye and answer. You said you saw the evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. You said it was more than circumstantial. You said it over 100 times on national television. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Where was it? Schiff looked down at his papers, his hands, anywhere but at Bongino. Senator, I asked you a question. Where was the evidence? Still nothing. Can't answer or won't answer. Let me help you. The answer is, there was no evidence. It never existed. You lied. For 3 years. Over 100 television appearances. Dozens of congressional hearings. Countless interviews. Every single time you lied. Bongino straightened up, looked at the rest of the committee. And that's what this briefing is really about, senators. Not FBI reform, not oversight. It's about the fact that one of your colleagues systematically lied to the American people, leaked classified information to destroy a sitting president, and got away with it because his party protected him. He gathered his documents, organized them back into the folder. But I'm not done yet, because we haven't even talked about the FISA abuse, the Carter Page surveillance, the Steele dossier, all the things Senator Schiff defended when he knew they were lies. Bongino looked at Schiff one more time. You ready for round 2, Senator? Because this is where it gets really bad for you. Bongino pulled out a thick report. The cover bore the Department of Justice seal, and the title, Review of 4 FISA Applications and Other Aspects of the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane Investigation. December 2019. Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz released this report. 478 pages. You know what it found, Senator. He didn't wait for Schiff to answer. 17 significant errors and omissions in the FISA applications used to surveil Carter Page. 17. The IG didn't find 1 or 2 mistakes. He found a systematic pattern of misconduct. Bongino opened the report to a bookmarked page. But that's not what you told the American people, is it? February 2018. You released your own memo defending the FBI's FISA process. Want me to read what you said? He pulled out Schiff's memo, the one with the official House Intelligence Committee letterhead. Quote, FBI and DOJ officials did not abuse the FISA process, omit material information, or subvert this vital tool to spy on the Trump campaign. Unquote. He set it down, picked up the IG report. The Inspector General found that the FBI did exactly those things. Let me count them for you. Bongino started ticking off on his fingers. 1. The FBI relied on the Steele dossier without verifying it. 2. They knew Steele was being paid by the Clinton campaign. Didn't tell the FISA court. 3. They knew Steele's primary source disavowed the dossier. Didn't tell the court. 4. They knew Carter Page had been working for the CIA, not against America. didn't tell the court. 5. An FBI lawyer named Kevin Kleinsmith doctored an email to make Page look guilty. Didn't tell the court. He was up to 5 fingers now, held up his other hand. 6. They omitted exculpatory information. 7. They misrepresented the nature of Steele's subsources. 8. They failed to update the court when evidence fell apart. 9. They included information they knew was false. 10. They excluded information that would have undermined their case. Both hands up now. He kept going. 11 through 17. More omissions, more fabrications, more lies to a federal judge. Bongino set the report down with a thud. 17 significant errors and omissions. And you, Senator, said the FBI did nothing wrong. You defended this process. You wrote a memo calling it proper oversight. Schiff tried to respond. The IG's report was subject to interpretation. Interpretation. Bongino's voice rose sharply. Senator, an FBI lawyer pled guilty to fabricating evidence. Kevin Kleinsmith doctored an email from the CIA to make it say the opposite of what it actually said. He went to prison. That's not interpretation. That's a crime. He pulled out the court documents from Kleinsmith's case. Here's what he did. The CIA sent an email saying Carter Page was working as an operational contact for them, meaning Page was helping America, not Russia. Kleinsmith changed it to say Page was not a source for the CIA, complete opposite, then used that fabricated email to get a surveillance warrant. Bongino looked up at Schiff. And you defended that process. You said the FBI did nothing wrong. Why, Senator, why would you defend that? The room was silent, every senator watching, waiting. I'll tell you why. Because if you admitted the FISA process was abused, your entire Russia collusion narrative falls apart. If the FBI lied to spy on Carter Page, then maybe they lied about other things. Maybe there was no there from the beginning. Maybe you were the one pushing a hoax. Schiff's voice was strained now, desperate. The IG report also found that the investigation was properly predicated. Properly predicated. Bongino laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. Yeah, it was predicated on George Papadopoulos getting drunk and maybe saying something to an Australian diplomat. That's it. That's your evidence for investigating a presidential campaign. He pulled out more documents. Let me read you what John Durham found, the special counsel who investigated the origins of Crossfire Hurricane. His report came out in May 2023. Bongino read, the FBI's handling of important aspects of the Crossfire Hurricane matter were seriously deficient. The department and the FBI failed to uphold their important mission of strict fidelity to the law. Neither U.S. law enforcement nor the intelligence community appears to have possessed any actual evidence of collusion. He set down Durham's report next to Horowitz's report. 2 separate investigations, Inspector General and Special Counsel. Both found the same thing. The FBI's investigation was a disaster. No evidence. Systematic abuse. Lies to federal judges. Bongino looked at Schiff. And through it all, you were on television saying you'd seen more than circumstantial evidence. Defending the FISA abuse. Attacking anyone who questioned the investigation. You didn't just fail in your oversight duties, Senator. You were complicit in the abuse. He picked up both reports, held them up. These are the receipts. 478 pages from the IG. 306 pages from Durham. Over 700 pages of documentation showing that the Trump-Russia investigation was built on lies and sustained through corruption. He set them down in front of Schiff. And you knew. You sat in those classified briefings. You saw the evidence or lack thereof. You knew the FISA applications were dirty. You knew the Steele dossier was garbage. You knew. His voice dropped. But you went on TV anyway and told America the opposite. Why? Because taking down Trump was more important than the truth. Because your political career mattered more than the Constitution. Because you thought you could get away with it. Schiff said nothing. His face was pale again, sweating despite the cool temperature in the hearing room. Let me tell you something, Senator. Bongino leaned on the table with both hands. I protected President Obama for years. I'd have taken a bullet for him. That was my job. When I left government service, I spoke my mind. Sometimes I was right. Sometimes I was wrong. He straightened up. When I was wrong, I admitted it. On national television. Remember when we arrested the January 6th pipe bomber last month? Sean Hannity played a clip of me speculating about it being an inside job back when I was a podcaster. You know what I said? He looked around the room, made sure everyone was listening. I said, I was paid in the past for my opinions. That's not what I'm paid for now. We base investigations on facts. I owned my mistake, on TV, in front of millions of people. He turned back to Schiff. When are you going to admit you were wrong? Senator, when are you going to apologize to Donald Trump for calling him a Russian agent? When are you going to apologize to the American people for lying to them? For 3 years. Silence. That's what I thought. Because admitting you lied would mean admitting you're not the hero of this story. You're the villain. The guy who weaponized the House Intelligence Committee. The guy who leaked classified information. The guy who defended FBI misconduct. The guy who poisoned American politics for 3 years with lies. Bongino gathered the reports, put them back in his folder. More than circumstantial, Senator, where's the evidence you can't show me because it never existed? And now, everyone knows it. Bongino wasn't done. He had one more file, the thickest one. He pulled it out slowly, deliberately. Let the anticipation build. Senator, let's talk about one specific leak, because this one tells us everything we need to know about how you operated. He opened the file. April 11th, 2017. The House Intelligence Committee received a highly classified memorandum from the National Security Agency. The memorandum detailed intelligence collection methods, sources, and methods. The kind of information that, if disclosed, could get people killed. He looked up at Schiff. 4 people on your committee had access to that memo. You, Eric Swalwell, your staff director, and 1 other cleared staffer. 4 people. That's it. Pause. Let it sink in. April 14th, 2017. 3 days later. Washington Post runs a story with details from that memo. Almost word for word. Not paraphrased. Not summarized. Direct quotes from a document that only 4 people had seen. Senator Cotton interrupted. Deputy Director, are you saying the leak was so precise that it could only have come from someone who had the actual document in front of them? That's exactly what I'm saying, Senator. The FBI investigation concluded that whoever leaked to the Post either had photographic memory or was reading directly from the classified memo while on the phone with the reporter. Cotton leaned back. And only 4 people had access. Correct. So one of those 4 people leaked. That's the inescapable conclusion, Senator. Bongino pulled out more documents from the file. The FBI interviewed all 4 individuals, under oath. Want to know what they found? He didn't wait for an answer. The junior staffer had an alibi. She was out of town. logged out of the secure facility at 3 p.m. on April 11th. Didn't return until April 17th. Couldn't have made the leak. He set aside that interview summary. The staff director claims he never discussed the memo with anyone. But Bongino pulled out phone records. His phone records show a 23-minute call to a Washington Post reporter on April 13th, 2 days after receiving the memo, 1 day before the story ran. He let that sit for a moment. Eric Swalwell's phone records show no calls to reporters. But the whistleblower we've been discussing says Swalwell had a reputation for leaking. Quote, "I had been warned to be careful because he had a reputation for leaking classified information." Bongino set down those records. Picked up the last set. "And then there's you, Senator. Your phone records show no direct calls to the Washington Post reporter who broke the story. Ellen Nakashima. No calls at all." Schiff relaxed slightly. Thought he was in the clear. But that's interesting, isn't it? Because the whistleblower told the FB something very specific about how leaks worked on your committee. Bongino read from the 302, under the system established notes would be run up to ranking member Adam Schiff, after which a decision was made as to who would leak the information. He looked up. "You didn't make the calls yourself, Senator. You were too smart for that. You had your staff do it, and you had them use their family members' phones to hide the trail." He pulled out more phone records. Here's what the FBI found. April 13th, 2017. A phone registered to the wife of your staff director makes a call to Ellen Nakashima at the Washington Post. Duration 28 minutes. This is the same staff director who called Nakashima from his own phone earlier that day. Bongino held up the records so the committee could see. 2 calls, same person, same reporter, same day. 1 from his phone, 1 from his wife's phone. Why would someone do that? Senator, why would your staff director need to call the same reporter twice from 2 different phones? Schiff said nothing. I'll tell you why. Because the first call was to set it up. The second call from his wife's phone was to actually pass the classified information. That way, if anyone looked at his phone records, they'd see 1 short call, nothing suspicious. But the actual leak happened on a phone that couldn't be traced back to your committee. Senator Blackburn spoke up. Deputy Director, are you saying this was a systematic method for leaking, using family members' phones? Yes, Senator. The FBI found multiple instances of Intel Committee staff using phones registered to spouses, parents, even adult children to communicate with reporters. This wasn't accidental. This was a system, a method to evade oversight. He turned back to Schiff. And it all led back to you. The whistleblower was clear. You decided what got leaked and who would do the leaking. You were the quarterback senator, the one calling the plays. Bongino pulled out one more document, an FBI analysis of leak patterns. The Bureau tracked classified leaks from the House Intelligence Committee from January 2017 through December 2018. 2 years. Want to know what they found? He read, analysis of leak patterns shows a 93% correlation between classified briefings attended by ranking member Schiff and subsequent news stories containing details from those briefings. Time between briefing and publication averaged 4 to 7 days. He set it down. 93% senator. That's not random. That's not multiple leakers. That's one source. One person who attended virtually every briefing and made sure the information got to friendly reporters. Bongino's voice hardened. And before you claim this is all speculation, let me remind you, Mike Pompeo, the CIA director at the time, went on the record saying you leaked classified information with alarming regularity. He said it forced him to withhold intelligence from Congress. The CIA director said you couldn't be trusted. He pulled out a transcript of Pompeo's interview. Here's what he said, exact quote, "Adam Schiff lied to the American people, and during my time as CIA director and Secretary of State, I know that he leaked classified information that had been provided to him. Not suspected. Not might have. No." Bongino looked around the room. "So we have FBI investigation showing a pattern of leaks tied to Senator Schiff. Phone records showing his staff using family members' phones. A whistleblower saying Schiff directed the leaking operation, and the CIA director saying Schiff absolutely leaked classified information." He turned back to Schiff. "Senator, the evidence against you is overwhelming. You ran a systematic leak operation out of the House Intelligence Committee. You used your staff as cutouts. You targeted specific reporters who would write the stories you wanted. And you did it all while going on television claiming to be a defender of intelligence community security." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The room was so quiet, everyone could hear it. "The word for that, Senator, is treason. You betrayed your oath. You endangered sources and methods. You leaked classified information not to inform the public, but to damage a political opponent. That's not oversight. That's not transparency. That's espionage, conducted from inside Congress." Schiff finally spoke, voice shaking. "These allegations are politically motivated attacks designed to what? Bongino cut him off, hold you accountable. Yeah, that's exactly what they're designed to do. And you know why you can't defend yourself? Because defending yourself means admitting what you did. And admitting what you did means admitting you need that pardon Biden gave you." He leaned forward one more time. "So tell me, Senator, why did you need a pardon? President Biden pardoned you on January 20th, 2025, 11 months ago. A preemptive pardon for crimes you haven't even been charged with." "Why comes?" Schiff said nothing. "I'll tell you why. Because you know you leaked classified information. You know it's a felony. You know the statute of limitations was about to expire. And you needed that pardon to make sure that when someone like me finally got access to these files, you'd be protected." Bongino straightened up, closed the leak file. "But here's the thing about pardons, Senator. They don't erase what you did. They just mean you can't go to prison for it. The American people still deserve to know the truth, and now they do." He looked at the rest of the committee. "Senators, you asked for a briefing on FBI accountability. I'm giving you one. But the accountability doesn't run one direction. The FBI made mistakes during Crossfire Hurricane. Serious mistakes. But those mistakes were enabled and amplified by members of Congress who leaked classified information to sustain a false narrative." He pointed at Schiff without looking at him. "This senator right here is as responsible for the damage to our institutions as anyone at the FBI. More responsible, maybe, because he knew better. He sat in those classified briefings. He saw what the evidence actually showed, and he chose to lie anyway." Bongino gathered his documents, organized them one final time. "And that brings us to the last question, the only question that really matters." He looked at Schiff. "Senator, you said you saw the evidence. You said it over 100 times. You told America their president was a Russian agent. You destroyed families. You poisoned our politics. You damaged this country in ways we may never fully recover from." His voice was quiet now, calm, final. "So one more time, for the record, for the American people, for history." Pause. Where was the evidence? Silence. No answer. Because there never was an answer. Bongino stood behind the witness table. He'd been sitting or pacing for the last hour. Now he stood still, centered, a cop about to deliver his closing statement. Senator Schiff, I want to talk about consequences. He wasn't holding documents anymore. Didn't need them. This was from the heart. I grew up in Queens. My dad was a truck driver. My mom worked at a store. We didn't have much, but we had something. We had trust in our institutions. We believed that if you worked hard, played by the rules, the system would work. He looked around the room. I became a cop because I believed in that system. NYPD, 81st Precinct, some of the toughest streets in Brooklyn. I saw what happens when people lose faith in the law, when they think the system is rigged, when they believe the people in power are corrupt. His voice hardened. You created that, Senator. You and people like you. You took Americans' trust in their institutions and you shattered it. For what political advantage, career advancement? Because you thought Hillary Clinton should have won, Schiff tried to interrupt. Deputy Director, I think. No. Bongino's voice was flat, hard. You don't get to talk right now. You've talked for 8 years. You've been on every cable news show in America. You've given speeches, written op-eds. You've had your say. Now, you're going to listen. The room was frozen. No one had ever seen a witness speak to a senator like this. I joined the Secret Service in 1999. Spent 12 years protecting presidents. Bush, Obama. Didn't matter their party. Didn't matter if I voted for them. When I put on that suit and that earpiece, my job was to take a bullet if necessary. And I would have, without hesitation. He looked at Schiff. I protected President Obama. I stood next to him in Prague, Jakarta, Afghanistan, some of the most dangerous places on earth. I'd have died for him. That's the oath I took. That's what service means. His voice rose. And then I watched you, Senator, spend 3 years calling President Trump a traitor, claiming he was a Russian agent, saying you'd seen evidence of collusion. And I thought, no way. No way the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee would lie about something that serious. The system has checks and balances. Someone would stop this. He laughed bitterly. But no one stopped you. You went on MSNBC and CNN and ABC and CBS and told the same lies over and over. And the media ate it up because they wanted it to be true. They needed it to be true. So they gave you platform after platform to poison the country. Bongino walked closer to Schiff's seat. Do you know what you did to my family? Senator, my cousin Guy I grew up with won't talk to me anymore. Because I defended Trump. Because I said the Russia collusion story smelled wrong. He thinks I'm a traitor. He thinks I've betrayed the country. Why? Because you told him Trump was a Russian agent. You said you had evidence. His voice cracked slightly with genuine emotion. My cousin was a firefighter. September 11th, 2001. He was at the towers. Lost friends that day. The most patriotic man I know. And you made him think his own cousin was defending a traitor. That's what your lies did. They didn't just hurt Trump. They hurt millions of Americans who believed you. He stepped back, composed himself. When I left the Secret Service, I became a commentator. I had a podcast. I had opinions, strong ones. Sometimes I was right. Sometimes I was wrong. And yeah, sometimes I speculated about things that turned out to be incorrect. He looked at the committee members. But here's the difference. When I was wrong, I admitted it. When we arrested the pipe bomber last month, Sean Hannity showed me a clip of myself from my podcast days, speculating it might be an inside job. I said, I was paid for opinions then. I'm paid for facts now. I owned my mistake. On national television. He turned to Schiff. You haven't owned anything. You've never apologized. Never admitted you were wrong. Never acknowledged that you spent 3 years lying to America about having evidence of collusion. Why is that? Senator, is it because admitting you lied would destroy what's left of your credibility? Is it because your entire political identity is built on being the guy who stood up to Trump? Schiff's hands were shaking now. He kept them clasped on the table. Or is it because you can't admit it? Because admitting you lied about the evidence means admitting you lied about everything else. The leaks, the FISA abuse, the classified briefings, all of it. Bongino pulled out one last document, Biden's pardon statement. Let me read from President Biden's pardon, January 20th, 2025. Quote, the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing. He set it down. You know what that is. Senator, that's lawyers speak for. We're protecting these people from prosecution, but we're not admitting they did anything wrong because that would be politically damaging. It's a legal fiction. Everyone knows what that pardon means. He looked around the room again. Innocent people don't need pardons. People who did nothing wrong don't need preemptive protection from prosecution. Biden gave you that pardon because he knew you'd leaked classified information. He knew you'd lied to the American people. He knew that if the FBI files were ever declassified, you'd be exposed. His voice rose to a shout. And he was right, because here we are. The files are declassified, and everything the whistleblower said is true. The room was silent except for Bongino's heavy breathing, 8 months of frustration and anger pouring out. You want to know why I'm leaving the FBI, Senator? Want to know why I'm walking away after 8 months? He gestured at the files spread across the table. Because I spent 8 months trying to clean up a mess that people like you created. I came to the FBI thinking I could help restore its reputation. Help show the American people that not everyone in Washington is corrupt. That some of us still believe in the rule of law. His voice dropped. But then I started reading the files. The 302s about your leaks. The memos about FISA abuse. The evidence that powerful people broke the law and got away with it because the Justice Department protected them. He looked directly at Schiff. And I realized the system isn't broken by accident. It's broken by design. People like you want it broken. Because a broken system is easier to manipulate, easier to use for political warfare, easier to weaponize against your enemies. Bongino gathered all his documents, put them back in the folder. So I'm done. I came to the FBI to solve cold cases and expose corruption. We solved the pipe bomber case that sat cold for 4 years because no one wanted to actually work it. We arrested him. He's going to trial. He picked up the folder. And today, I exposed the biggest leak operation in House Intelligence Committee history. A systematic, deliberate effort by a sitting congressman to leak classified information to destroy a president. He looked at Schiff one final time. The statute of limitations has expired. You have your pardon. You're not going to prison, but you're not getting away with it either. Because now everyone knows. The files are declassified. The truth is out. His voice was quiet now. Final. Senator, You said you saw the evidence. You said it was more than circumstantial. You said you couldn't go into the particulars, but Americans should trust you. Pause. Let the moment stretch. They trusted you, and you lied to them. For 3 years, over 100 times, you poisoned this country with lies, and you did it knowing there was no evidence. You did it anyway. He turned to Chairman Warner. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my briefing. I resign as FBI Deputy Director effective January 1st, 2026. He stood. I came to the FBI to do a job. I did it. Solved a cold case. Documented corruption. And now I'm going back to my life. Back to podcasting. Back to speaking my mind. Back to a world where if you're wrong, you admit it. Where lies have consequences. Where the truth actually matters. He picked up his folder, started walking toward the door, then stopped, turned back to Schiff one more time. Senator, you still haven't answered my question. You said you saw the evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. The evidence that justified 3 years of investigations. The evidence that tore this country apart. One final time. Quiet, but devastating. Where was it? No answer. Schiff sat there silent, defeated. His face was pale, his hands trembled. Bongino nodded, like he'd expected exactly this. That's what I thought. He walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. In the hearing room, no one spoke. Republican senators looked grimly satisfied. Democrats looked shell-shocked. And Adam Schiff sat at his desk staring at the space where Bongino had been standing. For 8 years, Schiff had been untouchable. The hero of the resistance, the man who stood up to Trump, the chairman who knew the secrets. In 1 hour, Dan Bongino had destroyed all of it. The files were declassified. The lies were exposed. The truth was finally out. And there was nothing Adam Schiff could do about it. The recording of the hearing leaked within 48 hours. Ironic, given the subject matter. Someone on the committee, probably a Republican staffer, sent the full transcript and audio to multiple conservative media outlets. It went viral immediately. Fox News led with it for 3 straight days. Bongino's bombshell FBI Deputy Director exposes Schiff leaks. Sean Hannity played clips on repeat. Tucker Carlson's replacement did an entire hour on the FBI 302s. Glenn Beck called it the most devastating congressional testimony since Watergate. Conservative Twitter exploded. The clips were everywhere. Bongino's calm devastation. Schiff's silence. The recurring question that became a meme. Senator, you said you saw the evidence. Where was it? T-shirts within a week, coffee mugs, bumper stickers. Where was it? Became shorthand for every political lie, every broken promise, every time a politician claimed to have secret knowledge. Liberal media tried to defend Schiff. MSNBC brought on legal experts who explained that the whistleblower had been discredited by the Trump administration. CNN ran segments about dangerous precedent and weaponization of declassification. The New York Times wrote an editorial about how the hearing was a troubling display of partisan revenge. But the defense rang hollow. Because Bongino hadn't just made accusations, he'd shown the receipts, FBI 302s, IG reports, Durham findings, Pompeo's testimony. The documents were public now. Anyone could read them. And once people read them, the pattern was undeniable. Schiff had lied. Repeatedly. Systematically. For 3 years. His office issued a statement calling the hearing a defamatory attack orchestrated by Trump loyalists. It claimed the allegations were thoroughly debunked and politically motivated. It mentioned that Bongino himself had spread conspiracy theories as a podcaster. No one cared, because Bongino had admitted his mistakes. Owned them on national television. Schiff hadn't. The polls came next. Schiff's favorability numbers in California dropped 15 points in 2 weeks. Even in his own party, only 62% of Democrats viewed him favorably. The number who strongly approved of his work as senator fell to 38%. Republican House members called for his expulsion from the Senate. They didn't have the votes that would require 2/3 of the Senate, but the message was clear. There would be consequences. Maybe not legal consequences. Maybe not career-ending consequences. But consequences nonetheless. The 2026 midterm campaigns wrote themselves. Every Democrat who'd stood by Schiff during the Russia collusion narrative got hit with ads. Senator X believed Adam Schiff's lies. Can you trust them to tell you the truth? Devastating in swing districts. Schiff himself went quiet. No media appearances for 3 weeks after the hearing. His staff said he was focused on Senate work. Translation, hiding until the storm passed. But the storm didn't pass. Because unlike other scandals, this one had documentation. The FBI files didn't go away. The truth didn't fade. Every time Schiff tried to move on, someone would post the clips again. Where was it? Would trend on Twitter again. By mid-January, political analysts were openly speculating that Schiff might not run for re-election in 2030. His brand was toxic. His credibility was gone. He'd built his entire political identity on being the guardian of truth against Trump's lies. And now everyone knew he'd been the liar all along. Meanwhile, Dan Bongino walked away from the FBI on January 1st, 2026, exactly as he'd promised. No farewell party, no official ceremony. He just turned in his badge and credentials and drove away from FBI headquarters for the last time. 4 days later, on January 5th, he was back behind his podcast microphone. The Dan Bongino Show, episode 2847. The subscriber count had exploded during his 8 months at FBI. Everyone wanted to know what he'd do next. Would he run for office? Would he become a Trump administration official? Would he keep exposing corruption? Bongino sat in his home studio. Same setup he'd left 8 months ago. Same microphone. Same American flag in the background. But different somehow. He'd seen inside the machine, understood how it really worked, and he'd walked away with the receipts. He adjusted his headphones, clicked the mic on. This is the Dan Bongino Show, and boy, do we have a story for you today. His voice had that familiar energy, that street fighter edge that had made him one of the most popular conservative voices in America. So I spent the last 8 months as FBI Deputy Director. Some of you thought I sold out, went to the dark side, became part of the swamp. He laughed. I get it. I was skeptical too when President Trump asked me to do it. He pulled out a piece of paper, his resignation letter, the official one he'd submitted to Director Patel. But I went because I wanted to see if we could fix things, if we could restore faith in the FBI, if we could actually drain some of the swamp. Pause for effect. And you know what I found? The FBI isn't the problem. The FBI is full of good people trying to do their jobs. The problem is the politicians who weaponized the Bureau, the congressmen who leaked classified information, the senators who lied to the American people while hiding behind sources and methods. He set down the letter, picked up another document, his personal copy of the FBI 302s he'd used to destroy Schiff. Last month I sat across from Adam Schiff in a Senate hearing room, and I asked him a simple question. A question I asked probably 15 times during that hearing. A question he never answered. Bongino leaned into the microphone. I asked him, "Senator, you said you saw the evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Where was it?" He let that sit for a moment. He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because there was no evidence. There never was. He lied. For 3 years. Over 100 television appearances. And he got away with it. Until someone finally called him out. His voice softened. You know what the sad part is? I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to believe the system would work. That someone at justice would hold him accountable. That the truth would come out through proper channels. He looked at the camera, speaking directly to his audience now. But it didn't. The Justice Department sat on the FBI reports, let the statute of limitations expire, gave him time to get a pardon, protected him, because that's how the system works when you're part of the club. Bongino tapped the 302 documents. So I declassified the files, put them out there for everyone to see. And I asked the question that needed asking. Where was the evidence? He smiled. That same smile from the hearing, knowing, satisfied. We may not be able to put Adam Schiff in prison. He's got his pardon. He's protected. But we can make sure everyone knows what he did. We can make sure history records the truth. We can make sure that when people look back at the Russia collusion hoax, they know who the real liars were. He pulled out one more document, handwritten notes, his personal thoughts from the hearing. At the bottom of my resignation letter, I wrote a P.S. just for me. Something I knew I'd remember when this was all over. He read it aloud. P.S. Senator Schiff, you said you saw the evidence? Where was it? Bongino looked up at the camera, directly at his audience, at the millions of Americans who'd watched him testify, who'd seen the clips, who'd asked the same question for 8 years. Folks, the evidence was never there. It was a lie, a hoax, a partisan witch hunt designed to take down a president because the wrong person won the election. He leaned back in his chair, but the truth came out. It always does. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in the timeline we want. But eventually, the lies fall apart. The documents get declassified. The whistleblowers come forward. And people like Adam Schiff have to face the consequences. He smiled again, this time genuine satisfaction. I spent 8 months at the FBI, solved a cold case, exposed corruption, and asked the question that needed asking. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Would I do it again in a heartbeat? He adjusted his headphones, ready to dive into the show's main content. Now, let's talk about what this means for the future. Because the Schiff hearing wasn't just about one senator's lies. It was about something bigger. About accountability. About whether we still have a functioning system. About whether the truth still matters in America. His voice rose with passion. The old Bongino. The fighter who'd built an audience by speaking uncomfortable truths. And the answer is yes. The truth still matters. Lies still have consequences. And people who weaponize our institutions still get exposed. He looked directly at the camera one final time. Senator Schiff, if you're watching this, and I know you are, I'll ask you one more time. You told America for 3 years that you'd seen more than circumstantial evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. The Mueller report found none. The Durham report found none. The FBI found none. Final pause. Final question. Where was it? The question hung in the air, unanswered, because it would always be unanswered. Adam Schiff had built his career on a lie, and Dan Bongino had torn it down with a simple question that exposed everything. The truth was out, and there was no putting it back. Fade to black.